What is buffer time? What is buffer time? Is what buffer time?
Hello again, Buffer Timers. We're here for the end of the year 2023. We're going to talk about Trek's best and worst pieces in categories, kind of like an award ceremony. Before that, we'll go around and introduce each other clockwise. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
I'm Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
I'm Nathan. I run N Squared, and we do Star Trek reviews, watch along, and sort of stuff like that.
Hi, I'm Apocalypse Cell. I'm here to mess your stuff up.
And I'm Scott of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I don't think we have any Trek news this week, so we will just kind of get right into our first category, which may confuse some people, cinematography, which is your general, like, how are shots framed, and how is the lighting, and, you know, all the little things that make a scene. What is the best and worst in cinematography?
I can make a guess. For me,
Like for the worst?
yeah, like I think some of the episodes of Picard season 3, because they were so dark, you could barely see anything. I understand that one of the episodes that the power was out, but it wasn't really important to the plot for that to be a thing because they were in 10 forward anyway. So the fact that it was so badly lit and just sort of like red or blue was just really difficult to you could barely see anything.
Oh, you mean that? Who? What are we looking at?
That it's sort of an
You're
issue
saying
that
in all the
plays,
episodes power was out?
right? I mean, it's got that nice bisexual lighting, which is nice, but it's not. It's a doesn't really carry the story very well. It doesn't really function in any sort of way. It doesn't make any scarier. It doesn't set the mood. It's just sort of like a thing you have to like squint to see. It reminds me of those like video games where you have to like turn up the brightness to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honorable mention, multiple Strange New Worlds episodes this season had a pointless thing with the camera revolving so that like shots went from normal to upside down and then back.
I noticed, yeah, you were right.
Yeah.
I think one was in Lost in Translation, and one was somewhere else.
One was the first one, the Broken Circle, that whole thing with Mbenga and Chapel. Like when they're fighting the Klingons, at one point it rotates and like, okay, that happened.
Yeah, I'm actually going to give my best and worst in category to Picard. Because of the lighting. I mean, that director of photography, Joffin, however you pronounce his name, probably should not work in the industry ever again. This is egregious. When I can't see anything, and I'm not the only one that's having this problem, yeah, you fucked up. But later in the season, when the lighting was actually a little bit better and I could see some stuff, I noticed there were some really cool, probably directorial camera choices that would like start on a table and somebody would come into a room and you'd start in on the reflection and then pan up. And there was a couple things like that I really thought were nice. Other than that, the seasons have been just serviceable in camera work and shot composition.
I was going to bring up the cinematography in Picard where the Shrike was concerned. Like, I think we could actually see what was going on. It definitely exuded an air of, like, we are not good people. And the way the ship was shown, both, like, from space and from inside, I thought was just, like, really deeply like kind of finding that you should be afraid of this and tickling it.
I agree. I think that was lit much better than the Titan. Oh, hopefully Vanessa makes. Yep, there she is.
Here I am.
Oh! All right. Do we have any more to cover on the topic of cinematography?
In terms of worst or just generally?
Oh, just best, worst, just things you
don't-
liked about
yeah.
shots and composition.
I wanna give an honorable mention, I think, to the scenes in Those Old Scientists when live action people are interacting with animation. I think that was done like super well. Like it never really broke me out of the episode once it was like cartoons talking to humans, and it looked totally like normal to me.
Like something out of Who Framed Roger Rabbit type of
Yes,
thing.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
very much so.
Let's face it, it's standard.
As far as like best for me, what worked the most was most of and I don't know if it's the same for animation, but Lower Decks, I think, really knows how to set up a shot, knows how to compose a scene to draw your eye in. There's so many little details. Like when we would pull up screenshots, there were so many little Easter eggs just kaleidoscopically going inward. It was really cool. So cinematography and just composition in general.
And despite what some people might say, they don't overdo it. Maybe
Actually, if we're bringing up animation, I didn't think. Oh,
Yeah,
No,
we've
fine,
got a
go.
whole separate category for animation, and we can
Oh,
go into
sorry.
that right now if we want to.
I was thinking like cinematography in terms of like blocking and the way that they decided to point our perspective sort of.
Mhm.
I mean, it's obviously a huge upgrade, both animation wise and cinematography wise from TAS. That's kind of a duh. But as far
Yeah.
as like the way that our eye line is set is really, really wonderful. And I think it serves the story. I think it serves the characters, and it's great.
I kind of wish it had 2 ounces of meat in there. Like I feel like it could be a much better. Like I like it. I'm wearing a shirt, but like, because I'm a dork. But I feel like I just wish the actual plots had a little bit more meat to them. Like, okay, make all the fan service and pratfall jokes and whatever, I'm in, but give me something to care about other than the characters. Like, get me fully invested in the Cerritos and what it does and how they reach that goal together. I just need a little bit more meat.
That's always like the draw for me with Lower Decks. It's like maybe next season they're going to world build just a little bit more, and the Ferengi potentially becoming an ally with the Federation, I think, is an attempt at that. So,
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as just animation, like here's one piece from Inner Fight that I really liked that you didn't really need, but it was just this nice piece of animation that like it showcased light and darkness really well and worked. So this is what I would give as the best piece of animation in the season, and that whole episode, like, because there were a lot of scenes. You had like the Mos Eisley Cantina thing going on, and and here on the station, and on the bridge, and there was
and on the
there was
glass
there was a lot.
storm, wasn't that the one
Yep.
with the glass storm?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, there was a lot of really good animation in that episode. And as far as worst,
Yeah.
I don't even have any screenshots because I never cared enough to get them. But basically, all of the very short treks.
Yeah,
and I
please.
know it was supposed to be in the TAS style, though I won't knock that final one or next to last one where they did like all the different types of animation on top of each other, and I did dig that.
Right?
But as a whole, it's TAS animation. It didn't wow me.
What
And the thing
just-
is, there's a person on YouTube.
actually, that was
who-
going to be my one praise.
Oh.
The very short treks.
Yeah.
Nathan?
For me, so it like the actual creating the TAS feel.
Mhm.
I think they nailed that for the very short treks. It's like the only thing they did good, from like the music to the animation to even like kind of how the voices sound. I actually really like just creating the TAS feel for the very short treks, and that was going to be the one thing I praised for
Okay.
cinematography.
All right.
Yeah. I think one
I
other
was-
tiny bright spot in animation, what I really liked was Moopsie's Rainbow Vision. That was really good. Yeah.
I also love the Great Koala. It's just a deity that I fall to my knees to every time I see it. And
Yes.
like what I find a little disappointing, and I'm sort of surprised that they didn't do this, because the comic verse for Trek is vast and huge, and why not incorporate that? Yes, the Great Koala, wonderful, wonderful being, and it's very Twin Peaks here with the striated flooring. And what is that? It's like, it's interesting
The
how it's
Great
like, it's not a
Koala,
coat hanger, it's not a lamp. What is that?
It is a lamp, isn't it?
Where's
Yeah.
the light? Oh, it is a lamp. Okay,
It's a lamp.
it's just the way that it's rendering.
the lamp,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, I
above
see.
it.
Okay. It just looks like there's nothing on top of it from where I am. It's just the way
Yeah,
that the
they
colors
didn't
sort
really
of
like they didn't
make
like
it
outline
contrast.
the light very well.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I like how it almost looks like a naked light bulb.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I'm surprised and shocked, especially with like how talented the Lower Decks artist is, that they didn't incorporate any of the comic aesthetic into these short treks, which I would think is like a duh. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just meant to be the like, was it 50th anniversary of the TAS animation style. So, yeah, it is what it is. Del, did you have something?
What I was trying to say before is what really disappointed me is there's a gentleman online on YouTube who takes the soundtrack from old TNG and Voyager episodes and does a
In the
TAS
TAS style,
like
yeah.
animation. They did one for Threshold, if you can imagine.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and so seeing that
Phenomenal.
and then seeing the very short treks, I'm like, this is possible because some dude without a studio who was probably drawn on a tablet, like, did this, and this is all you could come up with. Like, I'm not expecting, like, you know, the same thing, but at least, I don't know. And the humor felt very juvenile to me. It was like butt and fart jokes the whole time. It really kind
You're
of
not wrong.
was.
Yeah, it was. You're really not wrong.
I think Lower Decks, their meta humor is so high up here that our standards are pretty astronomical if you're going to rip on Trek. So, you know, and they're also lifting jokes from Star Trek ship posting as well. So they have the memes embedded in the show. It didn't have that sort of clever meta awareness in it at all, almost, except for that second to last one that you mentioned. So it's like a letdown on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, I think so.
Also, that side game, the worst experience you've had in your entire life. the Kid Cudi minigame.
Oh God, that. Yeah, that was bad animation. That was a bad game. Speaking of bad games, has anybody else here? I know Vanessa, you had asked something about maybe try it. Have you tried that Star Trek Resurgence game yet?
I did. I think it needed to have some graphics bugs worked out for me a little bit. It's a little ragged in that department, but I did like the Prodigy game. That
Supernova?
was nice. Yeah.
I thought about getting that. I just started Resurgence yesterday, and I guess I didn't realize what I was getting into. It's not even really a video game. It's just a story where you press buttons every couple of minutes.
I like those kind of games. Like I like yeah.
It's a good story. I'll say that. I'm liking the story, but it's the least video game I've ever played my entire life. There's not enough there to call it a video game, but it's a fun interactive story.
That's like one place where Star Wars sort of outshines Star Trek is in the video game department.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right. So that
Yeah.
stuff aside, the next category probably won't take us long because it's hard to even think of who did what. Best and worst directors of the year. Yeah, Vanessa's face says it all. Because you've got to know who directed what. Honestly, I went through everything and just went down the list of who did the episodes, and all I can do is tell you that Jonathan Frakes did best in Those Old Scientists, and there is no worst. To me, a worst director would come out of, all right, well, this story was okay, but the episode itself didn't feel good. And I didn't have any of those this year. There were some stories that just weren't good because they weren't written well and there was nothing for the director to work with. I don't think there was anything that was less than serviceable on a direction plane, but good job, Jonathan Frakes. You win the Buffy for Best Director.
Are we handing out little statues of Sarah Michelle Gellar?
Yeah, I think we should. I just realized I just watched Clerks 3 last night, and looking at the trivia for that, I didn't realize Sarah Michelle Gellar hadn't acted in 13 years until she did that. Anyway, go ahead.
It would be like Jonathan Frakes trying to be in a comedy movie. Like, he's so identified with Star Trek that you can't really break out of that. And I think she was kind of caught in the same. I think that's why one of the reasons why Denise Crosby quit is that she didn't want to be known as the Star Trek chick until she needed money, and then she went on the con road and is now doing just fine.
Yeah, for a show that she was only solidly part of for not even one full season, it still is probably the thing she's remembered for most.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably, maybe being the mom from Pet Sematary, but yeah.
Wait, we're talking about Sarah Michelle Gellar?
No, we were talking about Denise Crosby. We were talking about Sarah Michelle. Do you have something about?
Okay. No. I was like,
Denise
wait, she was
Crosby.
the mom in Pet Sematary? What?
No. Denise Crosby was.
Okay. Yeah. Denise Crosby. It's a shame. It's a shame what they did with her character. I really wish. I'm glad that they brought her back as a Romulan, but the way that her character was just sort of like victim du jour, not my favorite.
I would love to see Sela on Lower Decks.
I would have really liked to have seen that Sela was the thing that was behind everything and not a broken Borg queen this season in Picard. I think that would have been much, much better. And it's beta canon, but by 2409, which is just a few years after Picard season 3, Sela is the Empress for the Romulan, what's left of the Romulan Empire, according to Star Trek Online. So that's a thing. That would be cool to see her come back in that role, or any role, really.
Or on Legacy as the captain.
Maybe, but she was like part of the Tal Shiar and stuff, which is, different. And then, I think it would be much better if she was, in theory, the Empress. But hey, Scott, everything all right? You are muted, sir. Cannot hear you. Might have
But
to
you're
log
making
back
the
in
best
one more time.
chases.
Sorry, dude. So the next, do we have anything else about directors?
I think
Didn't
it's
think
good
so.
that we can't think of anyone bad.
I did.
I agree.
Oh wait,
Oops. Yeah.
So the next Buffy's to give out the best and worst character development of the year.
I got a worst.
Do it.
She's the pilot.
Yeah.
I got both.
She's the pilot. She flies the ship.
Yep.
Do
Yeah,
something.
Ortegas.
Although I
agree.
almost want to say
Sort of.
Mitchell,
I think
because I didn't even know Mitchell's
even
name.
Mayweather had more character development, I think.
Ooh,
How about now?
no, I don't know. Actually, I think Ortegas has already got more character development than.
Which one's Mitchell?
Mayweather
So
had
that's
like
the thing.
one episode.
Mitchell is the ops.
Mitchell's
She's
Ortegas.
Asian and she's the ops officer. But the thing is, like, I had to go look her name up. So if somebody on that bridge needs some development, it's Mitchell. But yeah, I really feel like Ortega's, they keep teasing us that they're going to tell us something, and then they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I'm
Mitchell
a
is not top billed
pilot.
cast.
Mm.
Ortegas is, and that's the real thing. That's the sin right there. I've got a tie here on my
I
worst.
understand there was some sort of like
Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I understand with Ortega's though. There was some sort of like real world thing.
Yeah, her
where
husband passed away.
The actor didn't really want to do
Mhm.
trigger and get too involved with Strange New Worlds. I don't remember too many details, so it might not be entirely the show's fault.
Well,
But
it's the
she's
show's
still
fault.
like the worst just because of how much it's lacking with Ortega's.
It is definitely the show's fault to have her just be this one note. I am the pilot. That was literally her. Okay, it wasn't her
Yep.
only thing because she did get a little bit in
War Hero stuff.
in Under the Cloak of War, and that was really good. That was probably more than we got for all of Strange New Worlds about her, and I dug that. But I would put a tie between Ortegas and Beverly Crusher, because I can't tell you how little I care about Beverly Crusher's life coming back and having a kid that she hid from Jean-Luc, and then like tries to make it be his fault that he didn't know, and like not being a father, and so that I hate her. I've never
A
liked
kid
Bev
she
Crusher, and
presumably
it
made
came back
after her
badly.
dead husband.
Yeah. Name your
After
kid
her dead
after
ex-husband.
that
that,
the person
like,
that you had
Picard
the kid with killed.
Yes,
Well,
and they were friends.
to be
And they
fair-
were best friends. And he even told an anecdote
Didn't
about
Picard
that
say
guy. Yeah.
they had talked and
Oh, did they like agree? You mean to do that?
I thought Picard said that like, oh, your mom and I talked, and I would have named you Jack as well. They might not have talked, but there's definitely a line where Picard says, "I would have named you Jack as
That
well."
yeah,
Somewhere in
I
there.
think
Still weird.
that's that feels like an afterthought. Honestly, there's so
It
many
is
things
weird,
about that circumstance that make absolutely no sense. Like, oh, I'm going to take him away to protect him, and yet we're going to be like vigilante medicine dispensers and arms dealers in the
Yeah.
process, and be wanted criminals. Like, what? How does that even make sense? So basically, you're putting Picard in a position to arrest your son. Like, what?
I just want to throw a joke into the middle of this, if I may.
Yeah.
If Star Trek Legacy was going to be a thing, do you think Seven would let Jack take over 10 Forward and rename it the G Spot?
I love it.
Thank you. I do try. Be way easier to find.
Yeah. I mean, Seven's like, she's been doing some drinking in her later years, so yeah.
I would
see
honestly
that.
say the worst developed character for me is Picard.
Okay.
He like completely, his principles just went completely out the window. Let's consider a genocide in order to respond to the Dominion's threat. Let's just entertain that. That's never something that would even cross his mind, but it was like just a natural plan B. Just like compromising his principles to steal a ship, go over a captain's head and commandeer his ship, like to save some person that he used to work with that lied about a kid. Like the whole thing is such a tire fire. But I just felt like Picard let go of who he was the most in this series. I think it's the worst season of Star Trek in a long time.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that now I have
I
stuck
think I'm
in
gonna
my
have to
head.
change my worst scene. I
I
forgot
have
about
stuck in my head
that.
2 male officers talking to each other in a hallway, and one of them says, "Did you find the G spot? Because I couldn't find it." And the other one goes, "I don't even think it's real." That's what's in my head.
Hey, you know what you could name it so they would never find it? No, I'm just kidding.
It's on the holodeck. Technically, it isn't real.
So as far as best character developments this year, for
Tendi.
me,
Lynn.
I'm gonna go a mother-daughter combo of Freeman and Mariner.
Oh, okay.
Because Freeman, I mean, she started the season
I also did
just
Mariner.
like she has like every other season, just kind of screwing everything up in the Cradle of Exelon. But by the time you get here to the inner fight, she actually seems to like have a plan and be pretty good at what she's doing. And Mariner, as long as we don't see any more season 1 Mariner going forward, I think we got some great character development there.
No, I really thought about that. This one I thought like pretty deep about. And I think I just know more about Tendi now than I did when the whole show started. I feel like they've really like, yes. Sorry, I was agreeing with Norman. But yeah, I feel like we have a better sense of like who she is on the inside and why she is the way she is now. I love that this kind, warm-hearted, overly friendly person is also like, what is like the daughter of the winter constellations or the mistress or whatever. But she can have that inside her and she can pull it up when she needs to.
It gets longer every time.
Yeah.
No.
I agree. I agree with you, Del. Tendi's the one. Embracing the duality of her twin alliances, her to her home, to the Federation, to Starfleet, and fuses them together in a way that we look for in a Star Trek series. So I am really excited to see how this develops, because unfortunately the season ended with her leaving the Cerritos. So what does that precipitate, and does that mean that the Vulcan officer is taking her place?
Well, if a Vulcan officer is going to take her place, I'm really glad it's T'Lyn, because that has been some character development over this season as well.
I also
Especially
hope-
in what is it? Empathological fallacies.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like when she realizes that she's the one that's been making everyone act this way, and she's totally worried about it, and she gets, a pep talk from a, what's a good way to put it? Not oversaturated. I don't know, whatever you want to call Mariner when she's experiencing too much, obviously experiencing too much emotion. And, she realizes, yeah, she's okay. She's, in fact, Vulcan as a motherfucker.
The writing in this season is just so solid. And the only frustrating part for me was that Mariner's development took this long to come to pass, because she's been battling her inner demons for this entire run of the show. And finally, when she gets promoted, she has to face herself. So I'm glad that they sort of like, okay, we need to get this ball rolling. But yeah, Tendi is the most developed character. The best written character for sure.
As far as development, T'Lyn's definitely one to consider, since we didn't have much about her to begin with. So
I also think we saw a lot of development with Spock on Strange New Worlds.
yes,
I think getting a chance to see Spock when he's experimenting with emotions, and that you can see Ethan Peck kind of attack it from both ends. The idea of like, I have this well of emotions, but I've always kept it quiet. But at the same time, I want to be able to express myself. And the way that he does it, so it looks so unnatural, like that smile. And the way he laughs is really unnatural, but you can tell that he's trying.
It got smile off screen.
Yeah. Just on some
Ethan
Yeah.
Peck as Spock is such a surprise. I did not think that he would take this role
I
and make
think
it his
this
own in such a
season-
way. But yeah, he's great. Sorry, Nathan.
Good.
This season, I think was the first time I could kind of see Spock, Ethan Peck's Spock, kind of move from what he's been in Strange New Worlds closer to was in TOS. Like we have a rule on my channel is that we don't talk about Spock because I'm a very small minority who really doesn't like this take on Spock. But I think he did get a lot of development to where he's kind of start after like his breakup with Chapel and the stuff with the Lower Decks crew and those old scientists. He's kind of moving to like starting to reject emotion a bit more and move closer to what we see at the start of the original series.
Does
which I did
anybody
like.
find that arc a little bit incelly? Like a woman broke my heart, and so I'm going to be, inhuman as a result and embrace logic. I understand.
No.
I see what you're saying, but I don't see the intent. So therefore it kind of feels hollow. But I get where you're going, and I could see how someone impressionable watching this plot line might be, I'm just gonna swear off chicks because they're all, bitches and assholes.
Yeah, I do see where you're going with this, but if it was like really any other character than Spock that we know has had these struggles of human emotion versus being Vulcan, and like his whole Kolinar thing just before the motion picture, and then he doesn't finish through with that. No, I think it's in keeping with just Spock's character. I think it's something he needed to explore. Just by what's been written in the past versus like where we know we're going.
Mm-hmm.
So from main characters, who gets the Buffies for best and worst supporting characters? These can be recurring characters, people that have come back that we haven't seen in a while, or just a one-time, one-episode character that we've seen this year. For me, the worst bit of character development for a supporting character goes to Ro Laren. The writers really, really fucked that one up for me.
Talk about another frustrating thing about Picard season 3. My God, like their entire conversation, like Picard and Ro were like bickering the whole time until she exploded, and that is just like the worst thing that could have possibly happened, because you would think Picard is himself would understand on principle why she stood for what she did and joined the Maquis. It wasn't just to be a jerk. It was because she was ordered to leave her homeland. She didn't want to do that shit. And he should understand that, having like a vineyard and whatever. So it was so bad. It was such a regression. It was depressing.
They didn't get a lot of development, but they did bring the characters forward, and I have to mention it anyway, is Raman and Leela? No.
Lita?
Lita.
Lita.
We got to see what they've grown into since DS9, and I like that Lita's sort of the power behind the throne, very much like Ishko is the power behind the throne. I still think that they're working on making Ferengi a little less chauvinistic, but I really did think I love the fact that basically Lita told Rom, just play the fool, and Rom would be like, yep, that's what I do best.
Right.
That's so valid. That's so valid. Like Rom being dumb, even as a strategy, I couldn't get on board with that. Anyway, sorry.
I didn't. I almost put it as my. I have a better worst here, or a different. I almost put Rom as the worst though, because I didn't like the way he was portrayed as. I mean, he's always been like the lovable fool, but he seemed like it was just too dumb to, even though it was like part of the plot. He just seemed too dumb to exist in that one, and I didn't like it.
That's fair.
For me,
But
like
Ro
the
was
worst,
That's
It's
fair,
like,
yeah.
Dang it, Seven and Rafi, like, where did their relationship go? Okay. And why was Rafi having to, like, this thing of like meeting her ex? It's like most people don't even remember. She met her ex and like had to like have this false dichotomy of a choice, this like Sophie's choice of like either you have a relationship
Yeah.
with your son or you do what you're supposed to do. And it's like, why are you making these things? Anyway, it was so bad. It was so bad. The subplot's bad. Her character just like hit a wall. It's like they did everything they could to keep those two characters separate after like them establishing that they had a relationship at the end of season 2. Like
Yes.
the queer baiting, I hate it.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't sure after season 2 how I felt about it, maybe or maybe not being queer baiting, but like after season 3, I think it became obvious.
Totally happy that she's like an ally, that Jerry Taylor is an ally, that they both are, you know, outspoken in their support of the community. I just hate the way that's written.
Fair.
That's fair.
What about a great supporting character?
Do they ever?
Oh, go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the audio's cutting off a little bit on my end. But do they ever share a kiss in the entirety of
Season
the
2.
series?
They're
Rafi?
terrified of
season 3.
lesbians. Terrified.
I don't. Season 2?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
season
get
2.
the sense that Seven's been
Okay.
there before. I don't think that the Seven's
Okay.
first girl crush.
The way that they interface with each other was clear that they had a sort of established intimacy, that they sort of tried to balance each other out. It was as if as sort of very familiar, intimate relationship. So we saw more of Seven and Chakotay in comparison. Yeah, because they're terrified of lesbians. They're terrified. Except for that one DS9 episode, just
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a little bit of lower decks here and there. Yeah.
So, what about great supporting characters? I know Del likes Rom. What else we got?
Captain Shaw.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, for
The
as
way
much as we dog on Picard, it does have some good moments like that.
Indeed. And Liam Shaw is definitely one of the highest ones. I mean, you cannot tell me after the first episode he was in, his first appearance, anybody came away from that saying, I really like him. But
No.
over the breadth of the season, we learned so much more about him, and he's just so complex. And then he had to go and die and make like this ultimate sacrifice. But even in the Beyond, let's say, although he'd already written it, his performance review for Seven was like, recommending that she be a captain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just they didn't cram a character arc into a full season because it didn't feel like it was crammed in, but boy, did they do some good work.
I was flummoxed as to the reason why, if he was at Wolf 359 and he is getting shot at by Borg and having to be a survivor with survivor's guilt, why he would enlist a Borg first officer. Why would he do that? Why? Because you have to trust fundamentally this person with your ship, worst comes to worst. And he picks someone he doesn't trust. That's the only thing that I don't understand. Also, when he was doing that monologue about Wolf 359 to Picard, how this would be news to anybody else on the ship is crazy. Like, you're on the Titan. These people have been in Starfleet. They kind of know what Wolf 359 is, presumably. So to like have that announced, like be a surprise to the crew that, oh, he's Locutus, like what? Of course they would know that. Other than that, I did enjoy his blue collar, character, that he's a piece of shit from Chicago. Wonderful. I really wanted more of the character. I was mad that they killed him, but it's like, that's what Picard kind of does. It's like, we're done. Clip. They just give the show a haircut. I mean, it's the last season and all, but yeah.
Yeah. But there was
I have a really quick question about what Vanessa said. I seem to recall that people are assigned to their positions. Like if you want the Enterprise, you have to kind of apply.
Not when it comes to first officer. The captain picks their first officer, and that's
Where
been
do we-
said
It
several
depends.
times through the franchise.
Okay, I don't.
Mm,
Okay,
yeah.
They did mention in
everyone-
the season that he
Yeah,
picked
every
her.
once in a while, I mean,
Okay.
on like an emergency mission, if you got to throw a crew together, there have been people like Data was paired with that dude that didn't like him.
right.
So, like in an emergency, but when you're like fully staffed and you're going out into space just for a long mission, the captain picks their first officer.
Okay.
Right.
I also liked that he was basically the only reasonable person throughout the entire like first few episodes. Like at first I hated him, but then I watch it again and I'm like, he's actually not a jerk. He's fully within his right to say no to everything that's happening. And they waited until he fell asleep to steal it.
Nah, he is a jerk, but I mean, he's a lovable jerk. He's somebody. He's an asshole you want to like. He's like in Night Court. He's like Dan in Night Court. He's the asshole that you still want to like.
Also, like it's also like a role reversal a bit, because we've had so many episodes of Trek where a commander comes in or an admiral and says, "I'm taking over the ship," and that person's a jerk. So I find it interesting that it's completely reversed, that the captain's a jerk for not letting a higher officer take over, like, or Riker, who's also a captain. But yeah.
Yep.
There was like almost a running theme with like, this has been on my mind for a little bit, people being forced to deal with their trauma in a way, isn't there? I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about Shot 359, and now he's got to go up against, or got to deal with Picard, who kind of made the whole thing happen. Over in Strange New Worlds, Ambassador Doc Raw comes along, and Pike's basically like, yeah, this is the Butcher of Jagal. You guys were at Jagal, but yeah, you have to hang out and be nice to him. And then, swing over to Lower Decks, and Mariner's had this whole thing about being promoted because of what went on with Sitka. And then, she's thrown into this situation with Nick Locarno. I know, off topic.
No, all good. Yeah, I think we've exhausted that. I think you guys changed my mind. I had Q here, but I guess it could be Shaw, but he's technically a main character. He is a top build. His name is in the opening credits, or there wasn't any opening credits, but the credits. I had put Q, even though we see him for one scene. And I liked seeing that Q is still around somewhere, somehow. And even though I'm not really looking for a legacy show, I desperately want to see more about Q.
I just wish death meant anything. Like he died in Picard and he came back. Like, why?
I mean, there's two big ways that works. I mean, maybe he was never really... Yeah, maybe he was never really dying, and B, this could be a slightly younger version of him. So, yeah, because they're Q and time's irrelevant-ish.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
All right, let's get to some of the more...
Yeah, but
Go
I
ahead,
think
Dathan.
it's still... Yeah, let's move on. No.
Okay.
I will just say quickly that I think, it could work, but I think it still really undermines the second season, even if it technically works in the universe.
That's fair.
Same with
All
Data.
Right. I don't think it works at all with Data. This whole thing with Data's died like 3 times now and just keeps coming back some way, somehow. Brent Spiner keeps being like, I'm never going to play Data, never going to play Data. Here's another pile of cash, Mr. Spiner. Okay, I'll play Data one more
That's
time.
another thing that I thought Picard regressed in, was just like, oh yeah, bodily autonomy, people like measure of a man. Never mind. We can just juice people back up it whenever.
It's easier to climb the Black Mountain when you're an android.
Fair point.
Fair. So, what were the best and worst scenes of 2023?
You're a puppet. This is a freaking puppet. that was my favorite.
That's best. I don't even know if I have a favorite scene, but my least favorite you had already touched on once earlier, Vanessa, and that is that moment in Picard when they just decide to murder Vadic straight out. Like, oh, well, I can never imagine Jean-Luc Picard, or especially Beverly Crusher, coming to this. I don't care if it's their kids involved. How many times did Bev Crusher, in some kind of like really tense situation where they're in the conference room, take the moral high ground every single time?
That's fair.
It bothers me so much, that scene.
Oh, you want to talk about bad scenes in Picard? In 17 seconds, where it looks like Jack is going to die, and Picard, frantic and rushing to get to his son's side before it happens. Except we already know it wasn't going to happen, because just before this, Jack had a vision about something really, really important, and they weren't just going to drop that. So that's just needled me ever since.
I just have like PTSD, like high key, from watching J.J. Abrams talk about mystery boxes and how many mystery boxes that we got at the end of each of these episodes, and they amounted to absolutely nothing. And it's like, eventually you're going to have to open the box for it to mean anything. Yeah. So like ending scenes in that series, just like in that season, just.
I don't even know if it counts as a full scene, but it's one that Dustin pointed out at some point. It's when Seven is talking to Jack, and she looks up and she sees the Voyager outside wherever they are, the station, and they play the Voyager theme, and she's looking at it, and then she says something like, you're always close to home, or something like that. I know I watched that. The other one I watch a lot is when Vadic summons the plasma beast, the changeling thing that we don't ever find out what is, where she has to cut her hand. I like that scene a lot too. There's a lot of tension in it, and I like that.
That's interesting, because like that test was like sort of out of favor after a while, like during the Dominion War. So the fact that they still did it was like, this feels continuity issue.
So I might be wrong about how this works, Del, but the way I understood it is that the gooey thing, that's the changeling inside of Vadic, and it was Vadic's changeling part talking to the human part that
okay, that makes sense.
What's not really clear, what was never made clear, is the link between Vadic and the Borg Queen. They never tied those two things together ever, even though they're working together. And that really bothered me.
That's so interesting. I actually thought Vadic was answering to like a boss that it just didn't matter who it was by the time like the last two episodes came around, because it was a red herring, the whole thing.
Yeah. I know. I was as a DS9 fan, I was so ready for the changelings to be the bad guys. And I called Lieutenant Shifty before he was Lieutenant Shifty. And but yeah, I was really looking forward to more lore on the changelings, and meh.
I mean, we did get some. We got more than I guess I thought we were going to get with that whole thing. Like, it just shows like Vadic as a researcher being attacked by the changeling that she was researching, and then they like became one.
When two become one.
Ooh.
Sorry, I'm a Spice Girl.
Well, feel free. Spice up our podcast.
Spice up our lives.
Okay. Any other good or terrible scenes on the year?
I have to say, I'm the X.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did really enjoy Chapel Song an awful lot.
Is that a good or a bad one?
Oh, I think that's a good one. It's my favorite song from Subspace, so like I'm gonna pick that scene. But I agree with Dustin too. The dance scene is pretty good, but the closing number and the footfalls in the hallway, that will always be my minute detail that will drive me crazy, is when they're dancing in the hallway, you can hear when their feet hit the floor.
You know what's probably going to drive you more crazy? More than likely, that's not the original recorded audio. Somebody in post added those sounds because So you talk about coming from the theater background, and all right, you're
Right.
trained not to do this.
Right.
Well, all right. Well, in audio for movies and TV, you're trained to, okay, is this hand moving? Does that foot hit the ground? Okay, now I need to put a feet hitting the ground sound. So more than likely, it's not that they weren't cut out; those were added.
Right.
That's crazy. Because it was like, it's still the one thing that's going to stick with me about this year is going to be that the little footfalls in the hallway.
Yeah.
The pitter patter of little feet are echoing in Dell's head.
Well, like, okay, so when I did theater, like, and I would dance, I was not a thin person, and I had to learn how to land on my feet silently. So I'm like, I know it's possible, but it was just because there wasn't enough music to cover it, and it was just like, ugh. But anyway, I can talk about that for
So
about
basically,
2
they
weeks.
mix the sound badly.
Yeah.
In your mind. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it is. There's like really funny videos of where they edit out everything except for the squeaks of the foot movement. I enjoy those, and that kind of reminded me of that.
Oh,
As
and
far as
Norman,
like, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Norman, we don't talk about Moopsie since it ate Scott.
Oh,
Lucky to survive,
yeah.
man.
God, those moopsies, man.
Norman, Moopsie was my best supporting
Oh.
character, but we had moved on.
Yeah,
for
I've got
time.
Moopsie in the next thing that we're going to do.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I had to
which I
Erica written, but in the moment, I went Moopsie.
Yep. So if we don't have any
Yeah.
more scenes, then I'm going to move on to humor.
Oh, may I just bring up one more?
Yep. do
I
it.
want to give a quick shout out to the one in Picard.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I think my audio is a little out of sync with the rest of you. So,
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
but yeah, the scene where Geordi and Data are talking for the first time is Data/Lore is kind of taken over the ship, and he's kind of telling Data all the things he wish he could have said after Data died. When I did my live review of that episode, I think that's the only time in review I've had to stop because I almost like broke down with emotion because I really
It
loved
was a good scene.
that scene.
I mean, as much as like I don't like bringing Data back for the 30th time, that scene did really hit. It worked well.
Mhm.
I just like the thing that made me angry. Like there's some books where I finish it and I just throw it because I hate the ending so much. And the only one that made me feel that same way was when Ro Laren's ship exploded. It was completely pointless. She didn't have to do that.
Yep. Nope. Agreed.
And there he goes.
And we've lost Nathan, who may be
I think
just
if we
going
want to talk about humor, we need to talk about those old scientists because
Yes,
and
please.
it was written super well,
Mhm.
and that everyone had a good, like they both took it very seriously, but you could also tell that the actors were having fun.
Mhm.
And they're back. Yeah, those old scientists, as far as like just
Hopefully that
as far as humor, I
fixes
think
some
it
of my
probably
problems.
also hit
Yeah.
funnier than
Great
the rest.
scenes though, like Mariner and Boimler with Pike in his ready room, and he's talking about his dad, and so nice.
I know that you don't enjoy this episode, Scott, but charades, that one scene where they're playing charades and Pike just walks by and walks away, that cracked me up. That was wonderful. It was just such great timing. There you go with the dress uniform.
Yeah, he walks in with that, and then just nope,
Mm.
it's right on out of there.
Pike knows when to nope out.
As far as humor, my best one is the Moopsie. Is I have no bones, but
Yet I must flee.
yet I must flee. That's my best, and I don't know why. There's just something about goddamn Moopsie that it just gets me every time. I can see a scene, I can see that same just little loop of Moopsie over and over, and it's great. Love
It
it.
always works.
Just so you know, it's not so great when it actually does get you.
Oh God. You legit scared some people on that one, Scott. We had like comments about.
I don't think
like, I
anyone
was
else is gonna
driving
mention
when
it.
that happened, and I was like, "What happened?"
I was drunk, literally.
As far as worst humor, then,
Yeah,
Oh,
I
go
want to
ahead.
give a shout out. Yeah,
Go ahead, Nathan.
because I don't think anyone's gonna mention it. It was such a little thing, but I adore the joke of the Ferengi Dominion War Monument that's just lost
Yeah.
prophets,
Yeah,
which I
the
felt was so
prophets.
Ferengi and like just
So
silly
much loved
enough,
prophets.
but also still plausible. That
Mhm.
might be my favorite joke of the year. I love that.
That's
Also, like Boimler vegging out in front of that television, watching the landlord show, the landlord reality show. That was wonderful.
Yeah, the landlord cops.
hmm
Yeah,
Was it called
a lot of good
a
stuff in
rug
that episode.
dungeon?
That was in that episode. Yeah.
Yeah, that was also
Oh yeah.
you know something
Yep.
funny for me.
The Umox Rub Dungeon.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Great picture of Boimler.
Ugh.
Now, as far as worst humor of the year, for me at least, it's got to be the Mark Twain thing that just did. It didn't land for me any of the 3 times they tried to do it. And for them to bring it back
Yes.
at the very end, or in the last episode especially, like, oh god, why?
It totally feels like a joke that was written in a writer's room and they all loved it. And then, like, all the other, like, sort of inside people loved it. But then when they actually produced it, it just didn't live up to the idea.
I guess I'm in the minority here because I like how stupid it is. I like
That's okay.
I love that Talin thought it was like a viable like
Right?
conflict resolution strategy to like, yeah, we'll do the Samuel Clemens thing because it worked for these other folks. Like it was logical, but in the ridiculous way. I just liked it because it's dumb.
They properly hit the rule of 3. Did it 3 times and they're out. We do not need to see this again. When it was there, it did kind of work.
Yeah, I know a lot of people do actually like that one. I think I'm in the minority. I don't like the Twaining. Okay. We had a minor category here that I don't even know if I have an answer either
So to
way
you,
for.
the Mark Twain joke is worse.
No, go ahead, Nathan.
To you, the Mark Twain thing is worse than the very short treks, like in its entirety.
No.
Oh, no.
As far as stuff in
Because
a
you
whole
said this
episode.
was your worst, and
Yeah.
that also
That makes
happened
sense.
this year.
I
Okay.
would say the snot. If
Maybe.
I were looking for the worst humor, it would be the snot short trek.
Yeah.
Not
The
my
fish in the
thing. Not my
microwave just
thing.
Lost it for me.
Yep.
I thought it like hit like a stupid
Yeah, I had the same
joke type of vibe for me, but it didn't like really commit, and it felt like this is a waste of time.
Yep. All right, so we have 2 more categories. One's more important than the other. I don't even have an answer for this next one. Music
Okay.
and audio. What was the best and worst music and audio? Because I could say that most of Subspace Rhapsody
I
was
was gonna
worse.
say, yeah.
Oh,
But even then, it's still serviceable as far as music. So I don't know.
yeah. I mean, if you want the best in music, you got to start critiquing the musical episode.
I would also talk about some of the scoring in Picard
Yep.
season 3. They were able to weave in recognizable themes from past Star Trek in places and times that it was appropriate. Except I didn't like the end of Subspace Rhapsody when they put the old theme on. That just broke everything for me. But in Picard, I think like there was the dun, 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 like I forget where it's from, but there was, and I just liked how they all weave together, and that you would have these moments of sort of nostalgia, because that's all what season 3 was anyway.
Yeah.
But you would get sort of the musical cues that could feed that feeling of nostalgia.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay out of this because I don't really pick up on a lot of music. Although I have noticed lately, you guys know my whole side project, like just going through season 2 of TOS, that classic Amok time score of Kirk and Spock fighting gets a major workout. That's in at
Sure
least
does.
3 or 4 other episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically Star Trek fight music.
I get the sense that there's musical motifs that they sort of recycle,
good one, though.
depending on the mood of the moment. But yeah, I agree with Dell very well that like for as bludgeoned with nostalgia as we are in Picard season 3, at the very least, the musical cues actually make sense with it.
All right. We have one very important category left to go, and that is episodes. What are the best and worst episode of 2023? I mean, I think most of us have an easy answer for best. Those old
Ad
scientists.
Astra per Aspera is the best.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
I dig that. I love that. I love Nadria,
No, mine was different, apparently.
Yes.
or what her name? The lawyer.
I would've-
loved her.
I would probably would have thought at number
I-
2, but yeah.
I don't know their name, but yeah. I'm pretty sure I called Ad Astra per Aspera perfect when I reviewed it, which I don't do often. But no, that
Okay.
those own scientists is also a really good high. But that one for me was kind of the first really good kind of like moral one since many years at least, maybe as far back as like Enterprise, but I'd have to look at all of them. But I just really enjoyed that one, and it worked great for me.
Fair. I really like that one also. Though I don't even know if it comes in number 2 for me because there's some really good lower decks this year, but it's up there.
There were a couple issues that I had with that, just on a technical level, about the stakes of the trial not being entirely clear and the arguments made not really being applicable. However, so it's like really emotionally resonant, but the tense stakes that it uses to hold up the plot didn't really make sense for me. However, my favorite is the season finale of Lower Decks this year. I think it was really wonderful how they sort of lifted up Mariner as somebody else besides just this chaotic neutral person, and really made us look forward to a new season.
Right.
And Boimler in the big chair.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to have 2 favorites?
Please do.
All right.
Really?
So the first one is the super obvious Subspace Rhapsody. When I was watching it, it really did feel like, okay, this is the episode they wrote for me. Like, I've been watching lots of episodes they write for people who are into the ships and whatever, but this one, but I also loved Caves.
Okay.
I loved Caves, and I think because it's both funny and emotional at the same time.
It's
And I like when people play with my emotions like that.
Right.
Yeah, most people didn't like this one, and I really did. I'm with you, Dal. I don't think
Yeah.
it's the best, but
Yeah.
it is quite good. It feels like a very Star Trek episode. Like, we really got into some meat and explored our characters more in depth, especially our like lower decks characters we got into, and that was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see in Lower Decks that like how they deal with command positions, however paltry, how they deal with that responsibility. I enjoy seeing that.
So we all just dancing around those old scientists then?
I am. Yeah, it's an easy one for me. It's
Yeah.
head and shoulders above everything.
Someone said
Okay.
it.
Yep, I did. So what about worsts? For me, I think it's probably Lost in Translation. This is still serviceable. This year has been pretty good. I don't have an episode that I like hate. Or
Tomorrow
this is
and
like middle
tomorrow
of the road.
and
Are you
tomorrow. I
serious?
gave
Oh,
it
okay.
a
I like
2
that
when
one.
it came out, and I still don't like it.
Okay.
I mean, okay, I guess.
Sorry.
You know, I mean, as far as
Hey,
like
it's all right.
tired rehash of a season 1 plot, then it's got to be charades.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just barely below the Broken Circle, actually.
I had The Last Generation, the season 3 Picard finale.
Oh,
That's
wow.
not wrong. I don't think. It was
Okay.
so disjointed. Things just like a
Yeah.
couple of things just kind of, especially the whole thing with the
Easily.
Borg Queen, just like
I
she
think
just fell
the first
apart.
9 episodes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nathan, can you explain why you hate that episode?
The Borg
Because
Queen.
I don't see it. So can you give me
Yeah.
like your point of view?
Yes, please.
There's kind of 2 big things, and I think I was actually on the buffer time for this episode way back when we did that. But
Oh yeah.
first, I felt like the first 9 episodes were pretty solid and kind of cohesive, and they had a storyline that by and large I liked, even if it had flaws. And then you have episode 10, which to me felt like a finale for an entirely separate 9 episodes that we didn't see, that also just wasn't very good. But I think my biggest complaint is The Last Generation to me is kind of the end of that very slow decline of the Borg. That personally, people are gonna hate me for this. I think it starts at the best of both worlds. But at least like Voyager, people kind of say the Borg get a little worse and worse with every appearance.
Yep.
And I really love
No
that
idea.
original like Q Who proper hive mind. There's no Kreen. It's very disjointed. It felt like one of the few kind of true hive minds I've seen. And now we have a Borg who is one individual, who is the queen, who doesn't actually care about that strive for perfection. Like the Borg were never evil. They always thought that it was actually better if everyone was kind of assimilated and went to that perfection. And now that's totally gone. It's just a Borg queen who's angry and wants to kill the universe for revenge. And so it was now the Borg are just dead. We're the end of that slow little decline that we
Yeah.
But I would
I
say like
really didn't
striving
like it.
for perfection and assimilation is literally fascism. That to integrate the best of everything and delete.
I'm not saying they're right.
Yeah, it's definitely evil, I would say. I mean, maybe not like they don't see it that way. A machine can get away with being morally neutral, but I would argue that it's pretty evil, honestly.
Yeah.
But I agree though that like the finale is
I
not
agree.
good.
It's just they kind of they didn't think so.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, nobody thinks that they're evil, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody goes around and thinks I'm the bad guy and like revels in that. They think they're morally righteous in their duty and all that. But
But like the Borg Queen, for example, like she doesn't think she's good. She thinks I'm gonna go out on revenge because I'm angry. That's not good.
Yeah.
But she I don't know if she might even think she's evil. Actually, be like, but
not to mention all of this.
It just ruined the Borg for me.
Right. Not to mention all of this completely negates the entirely different Borg we saw a season earlier, where Borgati's in charge and she's like, yeah, we'll assimilate people if they want to be assimilated. But, everybody's like, oh, yeah, cool. Well, we're going to ignore you now.
The absolute best thing we could have hoped for with all of this mismatched crap that happens is that Borgatti and fucking what's her name, Laris and Soji and everybody just shows up on La Sirena, saves the D's ass, kicks the Borg Queen's butt. We're done. And that would have passed the torch on to the next generation, and great. But
except it was all up to the previous generation.
And what I'll say is none of the episode worked except for the very ending pieces. I really liked this end with the poker, and then I really liked the post-roll sequence with Q. But other than that, it doesn't work as an episode for me. Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
So yeah, but the end. So you're talking about, they had to lift from the last episode of TNG and then bring back a character they introduced in TNG. But yeah, I was just saying, fuck, what was I saying? The whole plot was, like, oh, all the young people have been captured and it's up to the old people to save the day. I don't know if I was thinking it at the time, but like your alternate title for this one, Dustin, should have been "Okay, Boomer."
That's a good one. I'm gonna have to do one of these at some point. So I like that. All right. Do we have any more best or worst episodes to talk about before we get on out of here for the year?
I mean, I still, respect the fact that Under the Cloak of War is a really well made and produced episode and well performed, even though I don't like it. But I made that point clear when we reviewed it. So.
Oh, I also thought that the episode where they're in that in Strange New Worlds, where they're in that alternate timeline, with
Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow.
Yes, I thought that was the worst episode, at least of that season.
Okay.
I just thought like the romantic comedy thing. No, I don't. It just barely worked. They were like making out because they were in the same place, and there was an opportunity. The idea that unless you kill this one child, that she's like, unless like she just decided not to kill a kid so that like eugenics wars can happen later. That one big man theory of history is ridiculous. And I mean, I understand plot wise that, fiction kind of runs on that, like, and a lot of Star Trek does too, where one person is the pivotal reason for a historical event happening when in fact it's actually like groups of people. But anyway, I just thought that was a really weak moral lesson from that. Like, don't kill babies, even if you know they're going to grow up in genocide people. Yeah.
I just didn't understand this whole thing that sets it up here. Why would this random time cop end up back on the Enterprise, which had nothing to do with whatever he was up to in the past? That's the part that really what? Like, I like the episode as a whole, but I don't like the setup. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Well, he found the script.
He found what?
In the past, the time traveler found the script for the episode. The script for the episode. And so he went back to the Enterprise because they told him to.
Because otherwise, yeah, why is he here? He should, if he could have gone back anywhere, why not? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
It was a Deus. Never mind. Deus as.
Oh, what
Machina.
Was he trying to get to Space Seed when like Kirk found Khan? Or am I inventing that memory?
Oh, okay.
I vaguely recall he had something like he was kind of a bit early or something. I might be making this up, but I vaguely remember he was looking for Kirk.
That would make sense.
Could be wrong.
I also thought they were just trying to figure out something to.
Why was he looking for Kirk? I don't know.
They were just trying to figure out something to do with the weapons officer, and romantically linking her with Kirk in a separate timeline just seemed like a really
This is a thing people do.
not thought through thing. And they didn't even sing together. Like, why?
Oh, fair point.
And they didn't get any condiments on their wheat roll hot dogs. There's something very wrong with that. Okay, so something I had forgotten to mention last week. We are officially 1 year old. Our first stream was last year, 2022,
Yay!
on Christmas Eve. It was just Scott and I. We hadn't even named the show. So by this show last year, it was finally named Buffer Time. Happy anniversary. Happy New Year.
Glad to have been here.
Thanks, especially you, Scott. You have been here for the most of them.
I do try.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this whole thing up. I'm not sure what we're doing next week. We have a few ideas, like comparing and contrasting different portrayals, like Ethan Peck versus Leonard Nimoy versus, what's his name? Zachary Quinto. And just different portrayals of different characters over the years.
I like that.
There's one that I want to do. I want to do Queers in Space, LGBTQ themes in Star Trek. I don't know what we're going to get to next week, or maybe we'll even take a week or so off. We'll see. but we'll be back. I would like to thank all of you here, Del and Vanessa, Nathan, who doesn't come around very often, and Scott. Thank you guys for coming here on New Year's Eve.
Well, if I could
Yep.
interject before we sign off real quick.
I was going to give you a chance.
I immediately after this am continuing my weekly live streams. I've been doing watch-alongs of TOS, and so I'm about to do Balance of Terror by complete coincidence. If anyone wants to follow me over to my channel and start right after that.
And I will throw the link in the description here just after we sign off. Okay. So thank you guys. Thank all of you for tuning in live and or
We
later.
love you, Norman.
Thanks, Norman.
Norm.
And we'll be back next week or the week after with some kind of Star Trek topic. Until then, live long.